The coming of World War II politicized an illustrator who'd previously been known only for wacky advertisements and surrealist children's books. He drew his first political cartoon in the fall of 1940, lampooning Italian fascists. By January 1941, he was a regular editorial cartoonist at New York's progressive daily newspaper, PM. His name was Theodor Geisel, but he's universally known as Dr. Seuss. He was born in 1904 in Springfield, Massachusetts, where his family ran the prosperous Kulmbach and Geisel Brewery, referred to by locals as Come Back and Guzzle. Between the anti-German sentiments that swept the country during World War I and the Prohibition years, his family's fortunes faded. But they were still able to send him to Dartmouth and then Oxford. He hated Oxford and left after a year. Returning to the United States, he sold his first cartoon to the Saturday Evening Post in 1927. He used the check to move to New York and take a studio walk-up in Greenwich Village. He signed his work Seuss, his mother's maiden name. He and his family pronounced it the German way, Seuss, but to the world he's Seuss. He soon added the doctor as a winking reference to the PhD he never got at Oxford. During the Depression, when so many others struggled, Dr. Seuss made a comfortable living, drawing humorous advertisements for Standard Oil. He also saw his first couple of children's books published, including 1940's Horton Hatches the Egg. He wouldn't do another children's book until after the war. Through 1941 and 42, Dr. Seuss drew at least 3 editorial cartoons a week for PM, freely mixing odd fantasy creatures like the ones in his children's books with caricatures of his favorite targets: Hitler, Mussolini, the isolationist Charles Lindbergh, the Japanese. His illustration 2 days after Pearl Harbor showed a bunch of slit-eyed, buck-toothed Japanese caricatures rudely waking the American eagle from a nap. In February, PM would run a Seuss cartoon depicting thousands of Japanese Americans lining up to receive packages of TNT from a booth labeled Honorable Fifth Column with the legend, Waiting for the Signal from Home. For those who only know his children's books, the rude caricatures and racist stereotypes can be startling, but they're entirely consistent with other propaganda and editorializing of the war years. You can see them online and in Richard H. Meniere's definitive book, Dr. Seuss Goes to War. Geisel had drawn his last Dr. Seuss cartoons for PM by the end of 1942. At 39, he enlisted in the Army. The Information and Education Division assigned him to Frank Capra's Signal Corps unit, making newsreels and propaganda films in a Hollywood studio nicknamed Fort Fox. He wrote for, but did not illustrate, the Private Snafu series of GI training cartoons. Late in 1944, he was sent to Europe to show U.S. generals there a training film for occupation troops that he'd written, Your Job in Germany. At General Omar Bradley's headquarters in Luxembourg, he met up with the publisher of PM, Ralph Ingersoll, who was also in the Army. Geisel would later tell the New Yorker that Ingersoll thought that he might, quote, like to have a peek at some actual fighting while he was in the area, without, of course, getting too dangerously exposed. Ingersoll gave Geisler a driver and jeep and sent him off to see a town he believed was near the front but in no jeopardy, Bastogne. The Germans surrounded it just after Geisel arrived. Nobody came along and put up a sign saying, This is the Battle of the Bulge, Geisel told the New Yorker. How was I supposed to know? He was stuck in the besieged town for 3 days. Ingersoll was sure he'd gotten Dr. Seuss killed. He was greatly relieved when they met up again at a party in Manhattan 5 years later. Geisel went on to be the Dr. Seuss we all know. Despite all his children's books, he never had children of his own. He was 87 when he died in San Diego in 1991. His ashes were scattered on the Pacific.